Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cloud and Clear. My name is Dana Berg. I'm hosting today, and I am incredibly excited. We don't have just one guest. We have three guests today, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation because we're going to be talking to one of the pioneers of rolling out Google Workspace within one of the most progressive states in the in the country, and that's the state of Maryland. I've been looking forward to this. A couple of days ago, I got a chance to meet some of our guests, and we were telling stories about the last decade of adoption of Workspace, and we were laughing and having a good old time. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my special guests. First, from the state of Maryland, is Tracia Sherman. Tracia is the Assistant Director of Access Management Services. Hi, Tracia. Hi. And then we also have Stefanos G. Oh, I knew I was going to screw it up. Sorry, Stefanos. Stefanos G. Did I get somewhat close with that, Stefanos?
The second try was good, Dana.
Was it
the first one? Needs work.
I knew I was gonna have a hard time, but to my state of Maryland guests, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, and then we also have a third special guest. I'm gonna treat her a little bit like my co-host today. Is our own Heather Sheston. Heather Sheston was the former champion of the rollout of Google Cloud throughout the state of Arizona, and then we selfishly plucked her, and now she is at Sada running our public sector business as an industry director for public sector. So Heather, welcome back. This is your second time on Cloud and Clear.
Yes, I'm super pumped about this. This is going to be exciting.
Good. Well, we're going to have a lot of fun during this episode. I can't wait to dive into the history of Google Cloud inside of the state of Maryland, talking about the inception. It's been 10 years since you've deployed Workspace. Boy, in 10 years, you've got a lot of lessons, lots of great funny stories we're going to get into, maybe talk a little bit of advice, talk about how Google Workspace has evolved, adoption, maybe talk about the role it's played in the pandemic, and maybe talk about some of the advice that you might have for other public sector entities throughout North America as they're thinking about their cloud journey. So let's dive in. As we normally like to do, we like to start with stories about our people and our guests. Heather, Cloud and Clear already knows about you, so I'm gonna start with you, Tracia. Tracia, give us your background. Tell us about your history with the state, and you've been there a long time.
Yeah, actually, the end of April was my 15th year with the state. I actually started as an admin assistant. I came from the housing world, started as an admin assistant, was there, got bored, didn't have anything to do, started asking every team for more work, and ended up working at the time at our service desk. And I started working with the LAN team and started learning, desktop things, ended up at the governor's office, just helping with desktop things, doing inventory, doing like any kind of work I could get just to keep me busy. And then I ended up at the service desk and was there for a couple years, and state of Maryland decided, that they were going to go Google. And my manager at the time, Susan Lyon, they said, hey, you need somebody else. She picked me and said, we just got kind of handed the project and said, learn Google. So at the time, I didn't even have my own personal Google account. It was December of 2011. And that's how we started. We started playing around with personal Gmail accounts and trying to learn the ins and outs of labels and, how things look differently, and started, emailing back and forth, and started using that instead of we were on Outlook. So we started using that. And then Do It was our first agency that we rolled, and it just kind of steamrolled from there. Sometimes we were rolling 3 and 4 agencies every couple months. It was crazy. Very crazy time, but very exciting. I really enjoyed it. A lot of late night hours sometimes, and as you said, Dana, lots of lessons learned. Each agency rolled a little different, and then as Google became, older, processes started changing. So we've have some agencies still sometimes that were set up much differently than the the end part of the agencies as they rolled on. So we have quite a hybrid environment that we're, still working on trying to get closer together so that everybody's kind of on the same page. It's a little difficult at times, trying to remember what agency does what and how they sync and, different methods they use to create accounts and things. So it's been pretty exciting.
You have been a jack of all trades over your 15-year history there. I love the story of how you've evolved into all kinds of various roles. I'm going to come back to you in a little bit because I'm gonna ask you about all those wonderful things that you've done. But it's really an impressive story. Stefanos, tell our guests your background and how you became, a great leader in the state.
Yes, Dana. Thanks again for having us. It's a pleasure speaking with you and Heather. So I don't have nearly as many or as interesting or as funny stories with the state as Tracia will share with us. I came to the state a little over a year ago. I bring with me about 17 years of IT experience. The last 12 years in the DC region, contracting, supporting federal governments as a contractor. And when this opportunity came up to finally be part of directly supporting the mission of a government entity, it was an opportunity that I jumped on. And it's been I started in January of 2020, full 60 days before we went into a COVID situation. So I still don't know what it feels like to work for the state. It's been crazier and, busier and, but I have to tell you, a lot of newfound respect for public servants. From the other side, it did not look as difficult or challenging, working with people like Tracia, available literally 24/7. Doesn't matter what time you send an email, you have an email response or a call, immediately. And I just didn't realize how hardworking public servants are. So I've learned a lot in the last, 14, 15 months than I think I did the previous 12 years.
Yeah. It's true. I've had the great pleasure of working in public sector as in delivering projects, and I know you know this, Heather. There is this belief out there, misbelief, that the execution of projects inside of public sector is easier or slower or whatnot. In fact, nothing can be further from the truth. The complexity of municipalities and the entities and the agencies and the various levels of authority and decision making make it a multiple of harder in terms of getting major statewide initiatives rolled out. And for the state of Maryland to make such a big and bold decision 10 years ago to go in on all Google, I'd be interested in your views, and probably Tracia, and maybe Heather to follow up. What do you think led to some of the decisions to go in, with Workspace back then? And, as you were getting onboarded and getting ready, what were some of the things that were heavy on your heart as you were thinking about how do I even begin to lead and roll out this across a very diverse agency structure?
Right. It was really daunting, especially for me. Luckily, we did have the help of a contractor. It was the only state employees on this project was myself and Susan. But I have to give, I think back then the names changed so much. I believe we were at Google Apps for Government when we first started. And I still refer to it this day, the rollout, the migration plan that Google had. Just, I mean, if you really followed everything that they said to do, it was an easy roadmap to follow, and we did exactly that. Like, we got our our core IT, we got the early adopters, we had some Google champions. We pretty much followed everything that they suggested, even from going to getting some of the executives involved, the really busy people that would use it a lot, to the people that had the most problems. And, we really targeted some of those people who like to complain a lot, that always said nothing worked, or they refused, they didn't want to go to Outlook. Those were some of the people we made the early adopters, so that we would get that feedback. So if something was going wrong, if there was some real difficulty somewhere, we could really focus in on that early and get that taken care of before we started migrating either the rest of that agency or even moving forward. And cost was a huge thing that led Maryland to Google. We saved a lot. I know one agency alone, and I want to say it was Juvenile Services, because they were getting ready to purchase some server upgrades and things like that. And within the first year, they saved around $600,000 that first year, just that agency. So it was, I thought it was a real feather in Maryland's cap to go that way. And trying to figure out how we were going to train everyone, because again, we got help for the migration part, but we didn't get help for training or anything else. It was just our team, and I was the main trainer for several years before we got another trainer. And I would spend weeks at a time every day training people as we went along. So it was, like I say, it was very cool. It was hard, it was difficult, but I really liked it. And we had a lot of people that were really excited. So going to be in those agencies when, especially when we'd have our go live, different agencies, we'd have balloons. We'd just make it a really big affair, and we Susan and I would make our own T-shirts. So every agency we had, we used Google, but, we stayed within the rules of, not using it as a verb or adjective.
Yeah. So the branding police doesn't come at you.
I would have a different shirt to go in. And so people would know that it was us coming in, they would know who we were. And it actually helped foster a relationship between those agencies and DoIT, because back then DoIT was pretty new. We started off as Department of Budget and Management. And when we separated into Department of Information Technology around that time. So it was a whole new agency, and the state was moving in a different direction for information technology and the purchases at the time. So we've actually changed directions a couple times since 2011. But sometimes you were taking power away from some agencies. They didn't like that. So when we came in, though, we were able to foster those better feelings and happy feelings. And they had faces, names to faces and places they could go when they had questions. And we would get them to whoever they need to talk to, whether it was Google related or not. So it helped I thought it helped push DoIT along in that relationship with those agencies that we didn't really have before. So it was really a really interesting time, and I kind of missed that early beginning. We rolled a couple small agencies in the last year or so, but it wasn't that big rollout live, kind of like we did, the first few years. So and people more, they know more about it, even though we always have better features and things changing. We get excited about, but those first couple years were really the most exciting.
Yeah. I'm interested in a little bit of the comparing and contrasting, Heather, between what your experience was at the state of Arizona. And I know you've talked about before the importance of sponsorship and champions, and the need to kind of speak with one voice from the top down to really get everyone mobilized. Can you speak to a little bit of that at Arizona, and maybe talk, and let's maybe have Tracia or Stefanos maybe say how that might have been the same or different at Maryland.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, Tracia, you're my hero. I don't know how you did all of that training yourself. Like, I feel like I went in and I was very naive and excited for this, new change, new technology for government. We don't often get that. And I know our executives were super excited for that as well, to see us bringing in new technology, getting people moving in a new direction, maybe looking at some opportunities to change workflows that probably hadn't changed in years. And so, from my perspective, I was super fortunate to have not only just a wonderful project team, I mean, really, truly the best when you talk about like gov workers, wonderful support at our agencies that we were partnering with as we were deploying with them, but just the most powerful support from our executive team. And I'm talking from the governor's office down. Our CIO was in massive support of it. Our chief strategy officer was a huge supporter of it. And that just really gave me the space to be able to go to the agencies, work with them. I think to what Tracia was saying, where it wasn't so much us wanting to come in and change this technology to make it harder for them. We were really trying to partner them to do something better for the state. And I think, in my role, it was about building those relationships. It wasn't so much about like, I'm going to make all of the buttons and the switches go, but I'm here to foster those relationships, listen to both sides of the story. And it would not have been possible without the support from Sada and Google. So Tracia talked a little bit about the support plan that was provided. I mean, we, as much as we could have, Arizona was very unique, but followed it to a T. And for all intents and purposes, it went really smooth, considering we had about 40,000 users, and 140 agencies that we deployed to. So all of those things, made it as successful as it was. It certainly wasn't just me or one key person.
Yeah, I feel the same. You have to get that buy-in from the top, especially as you go from agency to agency. We had to get that. We had to get that executive buy-in because we needed them to push that communication constantly, and get people excited about it. Not that it was just, oh, well, this is what we're going. You're going to have to learn it. Which, sometimes I would even say that people coming in my class, and like, well, I like Google. I like Outlook better. I'm like, well, we're not using Outlook. So, this is what you have to use, this is the job you took. This is what we use, you have to, I'd be like, well, let's figure out how, what do you think is missing that you don't think that you can do? And I can show you how you can do it, and that always helped. And I think, because in the very beginning, like I said, I was in the agency doing training. We were in person doing training, and that helped a lot. And so to be able to have someone there to show you, what the mail looked like, like I said, I think the biggest thing that people still have problems with is understanding that a label is not a folder. And that is like the biggest thing still to this day. I'm like, it's like 11 years, 10 years. I don't understand what you don't get about labels and folders, but it's still still seems to be, this organization. And when I would tell people, you can create 2,500 labels, but you don't need them. And they're like, what do you mean we don't need them? I'm like, you really don't need them because Google search is awesome. Like you can just search and you can find anything in your mail. And the other thing about pushing it, evangelizing the whole Google thing was that there was Google. It was it was the self-teaching, you didn't really need someone there to tell you how to do it, because if you didn't know it, you could Google it. And I would tell people in my classes all the time, stop writing notes, like pay attention. It's a lot. It's my basics class was 3 hours. I'm like, don't write any notes. I'm like, trust me, you're never going to remember it anyway. And we started putting our Google site up so we would link to stuff. I stopped even doing presentations at the time because Google changed so much. I mean, as soon as I would do a presentation, I had to change it because something updated. So I stopped and I would just do links, and, we just started going in and doing more question and answers. And I would just, do demonstrations instead of, a laid out presentation. But just telling them all the time, you can go to Google. If you don't know the answer, just look Google Apps for Government or Google Apps for Work, or, whatever the name was at the time. This is the SKU we're on, and you can figure out how to do it, or, go to our site, and, there's training there. And now, I started recording trainings, and, we have those things on there. So as, the years have gone by, I love Meet. I love being able to record now, instead of having that session where, people are constantly asking me questions, and I can just record a quick session, and I can send them the link and say, hey, you can have at it, have them look at this video at their desk time, at their desk whenever they get a moment. And if you have questions, let me know, put in a ticket, we can answer for you. So it's been really great.
I'm super curious, because I know, Tracia, we have a similar background as far as like deploying the initial deployment. But this is for you and Stefanos. I came over to Sada about a year and a half ago, and shortly after that, we went into lockdown for COVID. And working with you guys on this side of the house, how do you think, having Workspace allowed you guys to shift to that remote workforce? And I know you were, Tracia, very involved in the trainings and stuff like that. How did that look different than your initial rollouts?
So, Stefanos, did you want to answer? You want to let me? Okay. I think it was much better. It was, we have a lot of older employees. Again, we've had people in some agencies that never even touched a laptop before. So trying to get them on to use Meet was difficult. So luckily in our agencies, we have some IT staff that were able to help in a lot of areas. But you guys, Sada came in, and you guys did some early training for us that we were able to have people log on for. That helped a lot. And then, my team and I did some one-on-ones with some agencies to show them actually how to use Meet. And we've been doing that all along. So even before COVID hit, I had been going out to agencies every couple months, especially when Meet came in. We went from chat to Meet. I started going out and teaching chat. So it wasn't that it was an unknown. So we had already started introducing that. But once we went remote, I think the fear was allayed because of the ability. Oh, I can get on internet, and I don't even need my laptop. I can use my phone. I can use whatever device they had at the internet that they had a screen on, or they could just call in. They didn't even have to be, because, no one wants to be on camera, like, do I have to use my camera? Like, no, you don't have to use your camera. So, being able to use that, I think, was awesome. And I think it's made, this remote work, an idea that we didn't even have before. I think that so many departments, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Stefanos, we were talking about this earlier today, that we found that we don't necessarily need to be in the office, and maybe that can be some cost savings for the state, because there's lots of buildings and stuff that we rent. That, the state doesn't own, we rent them, spaces that are being used, from utilities and stuff that are being used, and in the traffic, that goes back and forth, that doesn't necessarily have to happen now, or even the locations of offices where we were. So I live in Baltimore, but I would travel to Crownsville, Annapolis. It's about a 45-minute, probably to an hour drive that I don't have to do every day. And some people like Stefanos and some of our other executives, they live even farther out. So, they're driving, some people, I think Stefanos, right, driving 2 hours to work one way.
It's interesting to hear you say that. I was just having this conversation earlier with someone else, that we're hearing a very similar dialogue from a lot of our Gov customers about the cost savings, the buildings that they don't need to keep up. Allowing their employees to not have to spend so much time in traffic and drive so far, and, the environment and all that kind of stuff that, so it's good to hear you say that, because we're hearing a lot of the similar things.
And it's allowed me not to miss meetings, because even if I have an appointment, like if I don't have to worry about rushing back, I have Bluetooth in my car. I turn it on, I'm driving and I'm talking, I'm still having my meetings while I'm heading home. So I haven't had to miss as many meetings as before. And you just just jump right from meeting to meeting. You click the link and you're in a meeting. And even when I was in the office, you don't have to figure out, well, which floor are we on? Well, which room? You're going from room to room to room. It's so much nicer just to click a button, and you're transported in that other meeting, within seconds. And I think it's been an extreme change, but a really good and positive change.
Yeah, I agree with that, Tracia. I think, Heather, strategically, there were a couple of things. Immediately when the governor and our secretary made the decision that everybody were going to go remote, obviously, we were like everyone else. Immediately start thinking, well, what do we do? And at that point, I think over 85% of our endpoint devices were desktop computers. So it was, it wasn't. I mean, in my previous life, everybody had laptops with VPN connection. So switching over to remote work at that point is just make sure the VPN appliances are robust enough to accommodate traffic. For us, it was completely unknown. It wasn't something that we had prepared for from that perspective. But quickly we realized, if you look at the user stories, if you look at if you try to define the number of types of users that the state has, we quickly realize that most of our users, they can do, if not all of their work, most of their work in Google, whether they're using email or Google Drive, myself included. And then we quickly realized we are actually in a very strong position to continue to provide support, because people are just, they need Google and whatever is in Google without even VPN access. So then, for us strategically, the conversation became, well, how do we supplement this? What about, let's say, the remaining 30% or 35% that we need, a more advanced or a more, a better connection to the enterprise. You can just get them on VPN, and all of a sudden, within a couple of weeks, we had a fully functioning mechanism for all of our users to connect to the state's, resources from home. And Google, I think, was a big part of this for us.
Yeah. Can you imagine, Stefanos, if this pandemic would have hit us 15 or 20 years ago? Like, what would we have been able? Like, it would have crippled us. Like, there's no way we could have gotten through this with the simplicity, in large part that I think, in large part, the Google Workspace platform has kind of really helped make a non-issue of, right?
Well, absolutely. And Dana, to that point, we haven't, I think we and Tracia, we haven't done a good job of, analyzing this or talking about this. But, Google Meets, it created a platform for our employees to feel closer together, even though we are dispersed over much greater distances than we were in the office. And you talked about this earlier, Tracia. And it's very common, by the way. Most of us feel that, meetings are easier to attend from home than it was in the office. And it is, because of the product that we have available, but more importantly, because of the services that Tracia and her team are able to provide, in educating people, providing support, answering questions, setting up sessions, just being available. Something like that, Dana, 10, 15 years ago, I don't know what you would have done. I mean, how would you facilitate calls, even if you have, I think, was it Skype that we used 15 years ago? I don't remember, but it was not easy.
It was like, to me, it was a blessing in disguise, because I had already been the last few years trying to get agencies, hey, let's get off that paper. Let's get off that paper. Let's use Google Drive. Let's, let's make these processes electronic, get off, the forms, use Google Forms. Let's, do this. So when this happened, it kind of forced those issues, because you couldn't use that paper anymore, because you can't go to the office and have them sign it, most, people didn't have printers. They don't have copiers in their homes, so it forced us to make these processes automatic. And Stefanos is a good proponent of that. Still our process is trying to be automated. So I think, like I said, blessings in disguise is some things happen for a reason. And I think it's pushed us forward more in that technology of getting things more automated and electronic versus all this paper.
Yeah, interesting, because that kind of rolls into the next question I was going to ask you guys. I've been fortunate enough to see, our customers, especially state of Maryland, state of Arizona, and some of our other Gov customers, that I feel like Workspace put them in a wonderful position. They were very well posed to move to the virtual remote workforce. And I think, to your point, Tracia, where, it sort of was a blessing in disguise, because it forced people to start utilizing these tools that were available to them. So I'm curious to hear from you guys, maybe, now that we're out of this, sort of pandemic phase, and things are starting to open up and get back to our, new normal, whatever that's going to look like. What is next with your Workspace and your Google journey? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, the first thing that we have learned is that, Google, I believe, and I say this every opportunity I get, I believe Google as a platform is the most well-functioning platform that we have, that we offer to our users. And I attribute a lot of this primarily to Tracia and the work that she does with her team. And, she really keeps it going. So, that helped me understand that this is where we have the biggest opportunity to improve, and not improve, but to grow is really the word. And how do we do this is we have to be able to create a platform for Tracia to introduce all these magical thinkings that she has in her head. Because right now, I wasn't exaggerating when I said she works 24/7. She really does. I mean, I think quite literally 24/7, because she always answers the call. And that's because we have her, eyeballs deep into operations and just the maintenance of the platform. So we started reaching out to, the support team from Sada with Google, and we started looking at what is it that we can do, now that we have a very stable environment, how can we build on top of this and make this a more valuable tool, a platform to the state. There are other tremendous functionalities that Google offer, and we don't leverage those because we do not allow Tracia the opportunity to study those tests and pilot and introduce them or socialize them even with the state because of the operational responsibilities that she has. So this is where we are today. We are talking with Google and with Sada, and we're trying to leverage your expertise, what you know about the platform, your experience supporting government customers, and help us understand what is it that we need to do in terms of, getting the operations piece out of our experts and allowing our experts to drive the innovation for the state with regards to this platform.
That's great. And Tracia, you have amazed me. You had me cracking up when we talked a little while ago, because in 10 years, in the role that you have seen everything under the sun, and it sounds like you've done everything under the sun. To accomplish what you've done with such a small team, I want to know how you did that. But before getting into that, like in a decade of doing this, what's some of the funniest things that's happened in your course of rolling out Google in the state?
Well, personally, I'll tell you, personal funny is in having these training sessions, I get recognized. So whenever I go anywhere, especially if I'm out of town, if I'm downtown here in Baltimore, any building I go to, my daughter says she hates it because she says, everyone always knows you, and sometimes, most of the time, they'll even know my name, but they'll say, you taught me Google. But the funniest story is I was on a dating site and someone liked whatever the dating site was. I don't even remember which one it was at the time. And that was what the message was. I think you taught me Google.
I can't.
And I'm sitting there trying to remember, I don't know who this person is. Like the name wasn't ringing a bell. And I immediately removed my profile. Right. But of course, I had to go to work the next day, and our assistant secretary at the time, Greg Urban, he loves that story. So he said, "So, what are you going to start a dating service here? We have to worry about people stalking you, like, I was like, no, I took it down. So, I love learning all this stuff, and I pick it up very quickly. And, I've gotten my last Google certification was the collaboration engineer. So that was my most recent Google certification. So I'm working on some others. I'm going to try to take them in the next couple weeks. So it's been really exciting. I like learning more about the cloud and talking about moving forward. We're moving more into the applications that are coming, to develop the API access and how we can leverage those to get more applications, more services using, that automated systems running. So the workflows work better, the approval processes work better, and how we can help these agencies work together, even though they're separate agencies, but a lot of them touch one another. So having shared drive and having some of these applications, or at least one platform where these different agencies that, technically are separate agencies, but they all have some customers in common, and them being able to know where those customers are with the products and the platform that Google offers has been amazing. So getting that information out and have people learning it, and whether it comes from my team or from Sada or from Google, I reach out all the time and say, hey, if you guys want to do some training for us, this is the information that, we want to present. We want to show people what is available and what you can do so that we can keep moving forward. And I think that you don't have any other option but to move forward, because technology is moving forward. And if you're not moving forward, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, the velocity, we have never seen in the workspace evolution a period of time where the velocity of new capabilities, new features, new products are rolling out. And so how do you keep up with that? And maybe explain to the guests like the role that my team at Sada has in the state as a part of that.
So Sada has a huge role. We have weekly calls with Heather and Mike and Atalo. And I bring up, because usually customers are reaching out to me, one, because they've had a relationship with me for so long, but we have an intake process now that has been developed where agencies, if there's a special request, it goes through this intake process. And we have a team that'll review that, see what's needed, kind of understand what they're asking for. And then they'll send it to, the manager, whatever team it needs to go to. So a lot of times, it always comes to Google. We're access management team now, but people still refer to us as the Google team. We called the Google gurus. We've been called all kinds of things. But it normally comes here first, whether, it's a workflow process. The biggest thing is document management system. They're trying to figure out how to use the Google platform to manage their documents and manage their processes. So I'm still looking forward to learning more. As Stefanos said, Google's come out with so much, it's hard for me to take the time to learn some of these new things. So I've reached out to Sada to say, hey, can you guys, send me some information? And Atalo, before we even get off the call, he usually has a presentation sent to me about something new, or a lot of stuff. It's maybe no one's even thought about it before because it's come from, inside. It's a particular process that we're using in government, not so much even particular to the state of Maryland in general, and I think I didn't think about it before until we were talking earlier, Heather, when you had mentioned that, the state of Maryland's been kind of like a leader in that government that government world with the Google platform. And I take pride in that. That some of the stuff we brought up, maybe no one's thought of before or thought about it in a way that the platform could work around. So I think that the more questions that come up, the more processes that need to be worked on that we could do within the platform only helps to push Google further ahead. So I always am welcoming the questions and welcoming the, what can we do? Can we do this with Google? And, if I can't find it, I'm going to Heather and I'm going to Italo, and, I send an email to Mike, or I use the support portal. And I use Linda and Garrett. We have so many connections and so much help from both Sada and Google. It's great. I mean, just today alone, we had a question about the meat reporting abuse. I don't even want to mention because I know it's being disabled now, but our AG had a question, and I sent it at like 8:00 in the morning. By 8:30, I already had 4 people respond to me. By 10 o'clock, I had an answer. So it's I get responsiveness. It's usually very quick, and that's been really great. Great support from Sada and Google alike, that we have that partnership between the two of you that helps us resolve any issues that we have. And even to the point of some things we don't like mentioning, or don't have to go to Sada or Google for. It's been worked out, and it's usually worked out, pretty quickly. And, there's some things that, it just isn't happening yet, but we know what's working or know what's coming. We love hearing the roadmap stuff. I get excited about things that are coming up on the roadmap. Retention, some of the changes that happen with retention is something I'm excited about, because Stefanos and I have been trying to work out a state retention policy, not just for the Google platform, because we have some agencies that are not on the Google platform as yet. So we're working with Department of General Services on creating a new state retention policy, and how long we keep that data. What do we do after that data is taken out of Google, and it has to stay at archives and things like that. So and a lot of the security things, the less secure app changes that are coming, moving more towards that secure environment. So there are a lot of changes coming that I'm looking forward to, but it's also, I'm not as experienced in that world. So, that's why we've reached out for the, professional services to help us move along in that security arena, so to speak, to make sure that we are in security compliance and we kind of stay ahead of that curve.
Yeah, I think from a process perspective, Dana, I have to say, the relationship with Sada, from what I have seen over the last year and a half, is perhaps the most mature relationship the state has. The funny thing is, up until a moment, I thought actually Italo worked for Google. I didn't even realize he was a Sada employee. And, and this is because, Mike and his team, they do really well of providing us a seamless solution. We get on a call, we have, this weekly calls, bi-weekly calls. And, one thing I'll tell you that I have never seen any of these calls is there is no finger pointing. I always feel like I'm the customer, and oftentimes as I do, I will ask the right person the wrong question, but, I don't see that. It's just, somebody will take it and they'll come back with an answer. And, this has been, I'm sure this is something that has developed over the years. I mean, 10 years is a very long time. But I have been, extremely impressed with how well integrated. First of all, the two teams have just merged. When they come to us, I could never see the difference between Sada and Google. To me, it's just one team. And then they are very well integrated with our teams, and they are approachable, available, And as far as, new capabilities, I really, really appreciate is it a quarterly roadmap that we have with Italo? I really appreciate that. He would just come and paint this amazing picture of what we should be expecting in the next 3 months. And, I walk away feeling, gosh, I can't wait for this stuff to come up. And it is very helpful. It helps us stay current because, Google platform is just very dynamic, and it is a little bit of a challenge to manage in an enterprise environment because, the changes are not tested or anticipated sometimes. But, having these conversations and then the ability to quickly respond to these, as the example that Tracia gave earlier with the report abuse in Google Meet. I mean, we discovered it, we had some concerns, and then before we know it, we got the response that we were looking for. These are a very good combination for how, this platform has created stability and security for us.
And one of the biggest things I really want to mention, because that's something that has, with COVID that happened last year, it made a change, but, for 7 years in a row, we had a Google conference, that Sada was a humongous part of, and so we were able to, usually it was around 300 people. We put on a conference every year, and we had trainers from Google, we had people from Sada, we had, people, little champions that, learned how to do something new in an agency that wanted to show a process that they learned. And we would come together and we would have this. We didn't ever call it a training session. It was just like an information session. We want to show you what can be done and what other agencies are doing. And then, Google always came out to do the roadmap too. So everyone knew what was coming. And we were able to touch from just the end user to the techie, to the more advanced users in every conference. So everyone left with something new and exciting and learned something new. And they were able to come together to hear what other agencies were doing and give ideas of how they could move their agency forward in processes and in technologies and, automating things. And it's been really cool. State Police was a huge proponent of Google Drive. They have everything in Google Drive, and they have the pretty little fancy color changes of when they, they get their certifications, their gun certifications. Every barrack has their own template that was created and shared, and now to where they can do those things in their cars. So where it took them several days to report, the report for the day, they would take several hours, and it would go to their captain, and then they would have to go through that. Well, now they could do it on a sheet in their car, and it would go to them immediately. And they're talking about just the time saving alone that happened with just using Google Sheets. And now that there's so much more integration of Drive and Docs and all the extensions and stuff that are available that we can use to make these processes more seamless and more automated has been wonderful. So that there's those forums out there, that that there's Sada, that there's just the internet community, the IT community in general, that you can just go out and search for these things. You can go to YouTube and find these videos, and I do that a lot. I just kind of go to YouTube, or like I said, I Google something if I don't know how to do it, and figure out, well, I'm sure somebody has done this. I don't have to invent the wheel. I'm gonna steal it. Show them how, oh, well, this person's used this, and let's see how this works for your particular process. And that's just how we keep going. I don't want anyone to feel that we've just said no, that it's not going to work. We try to work around or whatever it is, even if it means we have to get something else, another application or whatever. We don't want our customers coming to us saying that we can't do something they need to do for their business model, or something they need to do for their customers. And I think our, Secretary Leahy is a proponent of Google and the platform, and he wants us to keep moving forward in that direction too. So we still have that buy-in and that encouragement to keep moving forward. And I think that, that's definitely been the better aspect of it, is to continuing to have that support from the top.
Amazing. Well, team, I want to thank you. Stefanos, you said it right. Tracia is truly something special in this in this ecosystem. And I don't know if you realize how impactful the work that you have done personally has been, not just within the state, but also well across the country. We often use a term that we stand on the shoulders of giants. And I know that I feel that every single day. The work that Heather did years later in the state of Arizona probably would have never really happened with the degree of efficiency and speed had you not cut your teeth on learning how to roll out this at a statewide level. 10 years ago, we were building playbooks on our own and building training materials and figuring out best practices, and you were a part of that with us, and we have a lot to thank you for. And the rest of the Google ecosystem has a lot to thank you for too, as well as everybody involved in the state of Maryland as they've learned how to best adopt Google Cloud over the years. So thank you for everything that you've done, and Stefanos, Tracia, Heather, thank you for participating and being on our show today. It was an absolute pleasure, and thanks for all the lead up to this too, because I've just been dying laughing because we've only went into a few of the stories that you've probably gone through, and I can't wait to learn more about them in meetings to follow, because there's a lot to tell there.
Yes. Oh yeah, I probably have a book.
You should write a book. You should write a book. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This was fun. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @CloudandClear and our website, sada.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.